Have you ever found yourself wondering, why is she pulling away just when things seem perfect? Why does silence often speak louder than words, especially when it comes from someone deeply in love? Is it rejection? Or could it be something far more complex? Welcome to Iron Will Society, the space where discipline meets insight and where emotional resilience becomes your greatest weapon. Today we're diving deep into a paradox most men face but few understand. If you've ever felt confused by a woman's silence, especially when you thought everything was going right, this episode is for you. Trust me, what you're about to hear may change the way you perceive love, distance, and the stoic strength hidden within both. Let's get into it. When a woman is deeply in love, her silence doesn't always mean she's drifting away. In fact, it often means she's diving inward. See, love isn't just a series of words or gestures. It's an emotional ecosystem. And when a woman feels something real, something that shakes the foundation of her inner world, she often retreats. Not because she's unsure of you, but because she needs to understand what's happening within herself. Men are often taught to solve, fix, and react. We see a pause and we immediately assume something's broken. But silence, especially in love, isn't necessarily a signal of absence. It can be a space for emotional calibration. Imagine her heart like a compass trying to adjust to new magnetic forces. She feels something profound, maybe even overwhelming, and she needs a moment of stillness to orient herself. That stillness is not a rejection. It's a reset. This is where Stoicism becomes your greatest ally. A Stoic man doesn't beg for reassurance in the silence. He doesn't spiral into insecurity. Instead, he respects that every soul has its own way of processing love. He allows her the dignity of emotional solitude, even when it's uncomfortable for him. He knows that real connection doesn't always announce itself with noise. Sometimes it whispers or waits in quiet corners. Think about it. If someone is simply infatuated, they often act loudly, texting constantly, pushing for time together, demanding energy. But when love runs deeper, it becomes more reflective. It slows down, it starts asking harder questions. Can I trust this? Am I safe? Can I be fully seen here? Those questions don't always have immediate answers, so silence becomes a sacred space, a place where real emotions unfold. So the next time she's quiet, ask yourself, am I grounded enough to hold space for this? Can I stay still without turning cold? Can I remain open without demanding clarity? Her silence might not be a wall. It might be the doorway to something real, and only those with patience, strength, and emotional discipline will ever walk through it. One of the most common emotional traps men fall into is this. She's distant, so she must not care. But that assumption is not only misleading, it's also dangerous. Emotional distance doesn't automatically equal disinterest. In fact, the distance might not be about you at all. It could be about her own journey, her own emotional regulation, her past, her fears, or even her hopes. The mistake is thinking everything is personal, when in reality, not everything is. We live in a reactive culture. Someone pulls back and we rush in. Someone goes silent and we fill the air with questions, panic, and overcompensation. But that's not strength. That's fear disguised as urgency. In the philosophy of Stoicism, we learn something radically different. Not every stimulus requires a response. Not every pause demands interpretation. And most importantly, not every emotional distance is a message for you to decode. Sometimes the space a woman creates isn't meant to punish you. It's meant to reveal you. That space becomes a mirror, not a wall. And what do mirrors do? They show us who we really are. How do you handle being left alone with your thoughts? Do you collapse into insecurity? Do you start chasing? Do you lash out, or do you remain composed, centered in your values, confident in your worth, and respectful of her emotional boundaries? Because here's the hard truth. If you need constant validation to feel secure, you're not ready for deep connection. You're chasing emotional certainty, not love. A Stoic man doesn't base his self-worth on someone else's mood. He doesn't panic when there's distance. He holds the frame. He respects the silence as part of the dance, not the end of the song. So next time she feels distant, don't ask, "What's wrong with her?" Ask, "What is this space trying to show me about myself?" Because sometimes the distance isn't a test of the relationship. It's a test of your inner foundation. And trust me, only those who pass that test build something that lasts. It's a strange paradox, isn't it? The deeper a woman loves, the more she might pull back. And not because she loves less, but because she feels more. You see, real love doesn't just awaken joy. It also awakens fear. Fear of being seen. Fear of losing control. Fear of becoming vulnerable enough to be hurt. And that kind of emotional exposure, it terrifies even the strongest hearts. So what does she do? She retreats. Not out of cruelty, but out of instinct. Her silence, her sudden change in energy. It's not necessarily a rejection. It's armor, a defense mechanism she's used before, maybe from past trauma, maybe from betrayal, maybe simply because loving someone this deeply feels like standing on a cliff's edge without a parachute. And silence, for her, becomes a shield. The mistake most men make is assuming that this withdrawal is about them, that they did something wrong, that she doesn't care, but often it's not about you. It's about the storm inside her. She's trying to find safety. She's asking herself, can I let this person in without losing myself? Can I give love without becoming dependent? Can I trust him with my rawest self, even the parts I usually hide? This is where emotional maturity separates men from boys. The immature man reacts. He panics, gets angry, seeks validation. But the mature man, the Stoic man, doesn't take her fear personally. He holds steady. He allows space for her to feel, to question, to gather her courage. He doesn't chase or collapse. He becomes the steady mountain in her storm, unshaken, present, and quietly strong. So when her silence comes, don't rush to fix it. Don't interpret it as absence. Understand it as a signal, not from her mouth, but from her soul. And remember, the stronger the love, the deeper the fear. The question is, are you strong enough to hold both? From a young age, we're wired to seek answers, clear signs, predictable outcomes. If someone pulls away, we want to know why. If a message is left unanswered, our minds rush to fill the silence with worst-case scenarios. This is natural, but it's also a trap. Relationships, especially the ones with depth and emotional charge, rarely offer clarity on demand. And that's where most people panic. Emotional ambiguity, that space between certainty and confusion, is where real growth begins. But only if you know how to handle it. Most people don't. They rush into conclusions, project their fears, or demand reassurance. They want to label everything, define everything, control everything. But love doesn't work that way. Sometimes the most meaningful moments are also the most uncertain. This is where Stoicism offers us a vital principle. You are not required to interpret everything. You are not obligated to react. In fact, restraint, emotional restraint, is often the highest form of wisdom. Instead of asking, "What does this mean?" over and over, the Stoic mind asks, "What am I feeling? And what can I learn from this?" You stop trying to control the storm and start learning how to stand still in it. When a woman withdraws or behaves unpredictably, your first instinct might be to fix it. But here's the truth. Not everything broken needs to be repaired by you. Some things are evolving on their own. Some silences are not asking for answers. They're asking for space. And if you can't sit with that silence without losing your center, then maybe what needs fixing isn't her behavior, but your attachment to certainty. Embrace the unknown. Let the ambiguity stretch you. Let it show you where your ego still wants control, because in love, the ability to pause, observe, and not react impulsively, and that is a mark of true strength. That's what separates the emotionally reactive from the internally powerful. That's what builds the iron will society. There's a truth most men overlook. When she's quiet, she might not be retreating. She might be watching, not in judgment, but in curiosity. She's paying close attention to something deeper than your words. Your energy, your stability, your self-control. In her silence, she's not just feeling her emotion, she's reading yours. You see, any man can show strength when everything's easy, when the sun is shining, when texts are frequent, when affection flows. But what happens when the warmth fades, when she pulls back emotionally or mentally? That's when your core is revealed. Do you become desperate? Do you get passive-aggressive? Or can you remain calm, rooted, observant, even when the temperature drops? This is what many men fail to grasp. The silence isn't always a withdrawal. Sometimes it's a test not designed to punish you, but to reveal you. She wants to see what you're made of when you don't have control over the situation. Can you still show up with presence, not pressure? Can you hold space without demanding clarity or reassurance? Think of it like this. When the emotional weather turns cold, you have two choices: chase heat recklessly or build your own internal fire. The Stoic man chooses the second. He doesn't need her constant attention to validate his worth. He doesn't crumble under distance. He becomes unshakable. And ironically, it's that very steadiness that often draws her back. So the next time she goes quiet, ask yourself, am I being watched right now? Not for how I perform, but for how I hold my ground? Because the men who fail these moments don't fail because they don't care. They fail because they confuse reaction with connection. But true connection isn't proven through panic, it's revealed in patience. We've been sold a lie. That love should be constant, obvious, and overflowing at all times. Movies, songs, and social media feed us this illusion. If it's real, you'll feel it all the time. But real love doesn't work that way. It breathes, it pulses, it moves in rhythms, not straight lines. And just like the ocean tide, sometimes it pulls back, only to return even stronger. When you truly understand this rhythm, you stop fearing the quiet moments. You stop panicking when affection isn't overflowing. You begin to see that the pauses are not signs of something wrong. They're part of something alive. Just like the breath you're taking right now. Inhale, exhale, space. Love too needs its spaces, its stillness, its natural ebb and flow. This is where emotional maturity shows itself. People who chase constant affection often burn out. They exhaust their partners. Why? Because they fear the pause. They confuse stillness with neglect. But those who understand rhythm, those who trust the natural pauses, are the ones who build real, lasting connections. They don't smother the flame, they tend to it. In Stoic philosophy, we learn to honor the cycles of life, light and shadow, gain and loss, presence and absence. We learn to stop resisting the flow and start dancing with it. So when love feels distant for a moment, you don't react with insecurity. You observe, you hold the rhythm. You remind yourself, not everything meaningful is loud, not everything deep is constant. So ask yourself this: when love grows quiet, do you crumble or do you breathe with it? Can you respect the silence as part of the song? Because in a world obsessed with noise and intensity, the ability to stay calm during the emotional low tides is what makes you uncommon. And in the iron will society, uncommon is the standard. Modern relationships too often mistake closeness for control. We think that if someone truly loves us, they should be available 24/7. emotionally open at all times, constantly reassuring us. But real love, especially through the lens of Stoicism, isn't about ownership. It's not about emotional handcuffs. It's about two complete individuals choosing to walk a path together, not needing to consume one another to feel secure. Sometimes when a woman becomes distant, it's not because she's punishing you. It's because she's returning to herself. She's checking in with her own identity as how we go to. Outside of you, outside of the relationship, outside of emotional roles, that space she creates, it's a reminder, this is who I am, not just who I am with you. And believe it or not, that's not a threat to love. That's what makes it real. But here's the challenge. When she pulls back to reconnect with herself, can you remain who you are? Or do you start shifting? Becoming insecure, overcompensating, questioning your value. Her silence becomes a mirror once again. But this time, it's not just about emotional control, it's about identity resilience. Can you stay grounded in who you are even when she's not emotionally validating you? This is where the Stoic man separates himself from the rest. He doesn't chase validation. He doesn't try to possess love like a trophy. Instead, he embodies love through presence, strength, and self-respect. He allows space, not because he's indifferent, but because he knows. Real connection can't survive suffocation. He trusts that if the bond is strong, distance won't destroy it. It will refine it. So next time she goes quiet, don't rush to fix it. Instead, ask, can I be still and stay true to who I am? Even when nothing is certain? Because sometimes the test isn't whether she returns, it's whether you remained whole in her absence. We've all been taught, consciously or not, that love follows a script. That if it's real, it'll look a certain way, constant attention, endless communication, predictable displays of affection. And when it doesn't look like that, we panic. We assume something must be wrong, but that assumption, that's the problem, because deep love doesn't follow a formula. It breaks it. Real love is messy. It's unpredictable. It comes with layers of fear, hope, past wounds, and unspoken expectations. Sometimes the deepest love doesn't show up as a warm embrace. It shows up as distance, not because it's dying, but because it's real. And anything real will, at some point, challenge your illusions. When love is raw, it can trigger our deepest insecurities. She may pull back not because her feelings are fading, but because they've grown too big, too fast, too unfiltered. And in that space, she's trying to understand not just you, but herself, trying to make sense of emotions that don't fit inside the romantic ideals we've all been fed. And yes, from the outside, that can look like retreat. But here's where most people fail. They judge the love by how it looks, not by what it means. They see the pause as weakness, the silence as abandonment, the confusion as failure. But the Stoic man knows better. He understands that love, like life, can't be fully controlled or perfectly understood. He welcomes the rawness, not with panic, but with presence. So the next time you're tempted to say, if she loved me, she wouldn't act this way, pause. Ask instead, is it possible that this doesn't look like love because it actually is? The strongest love stories are never neat. They're honest, uncomfortable, real. And if you can hold space for that kind of rawness, you're not just in love, you're ready for it. Let's be brutally honest for a moment. If her silence shakes your foundation, if you spiral the moment she pulls away, then your foundation wasn't really yours to begin with. It was borrowed, built on her attention, her validation, her emotional presence. That's not self-worth. That's dependency wearing a disguise. And the second she steps back, the disguise falls. A lot of men confuse emotional connection with emotional identity. They think being loved is the same as being whole. So when that love pauses, even for a moment, they collapse. They text endlessly, they overthink, they lose sleep. Why? Because they weren't standing on solid ground. They were standing on her, and the moment she moves, they fall. But here's the truth that Stoicism drills into us. Your worth is yours. It does not shift with someone else's mood. It does not shrink in someone else's silence. And it absolutely does not disappear when someone takes space. A Stoic man knows that relationships are important, but not defining. He draws strength from within, not from how someone else feels about him on any given day. So when she becomes distant, when communication fades, you don't chase, you check in with yourself. You ask, am I grounded right now? Am I looking for reassurance to fill a void? Or am I capable of holding this space with patience and power? Because the moment you stop needing her behavior to validate your identity, that's the moment you become truly unshakable. Remember this, her silence isn't always the problem. Sometimes it's the flashlight that reveals where your own self-worth needs reinforcement. And in the Iron Will Society, we don't fear that flashlight. We use it. We welcome it. Because the man who doesn't need constant reassurance is the man who commands quiet respect. Here's the truth few people are willing to tell you. Life and love won't always give you answers. Sometimes you won't know where you stand. You won't know what she's thinking. You won't know what tomorrow holds. And in those moments, you face a choice. Become desperate for control, or become disciplined in self. Too many men waste energy trying to decode every look, every text delay, every sigh. They turn their relationships into puzzles as if love is a code to crack rather than a reality to embody. But the wise man, the Stoic man, knows that love isn't something you chase, it's something you bring, and the most powerful love you can offer is calm, present, and unattached to outcome. So the real question isn't, what does she mean by this? The real question is, who am I right now when I don't have clarity? Can I remain centered when everything inside me wants to react? Can I love her without trying to control her? Can I offer space without collapsing into neediness? Because if you can, that's the kind of strength no one can fake, and no woman forgets. This is the essence of inner mastery, showing up without fear, loving without attachment, and leading with stillness. You become a force, not because you dominate the moment, but because you don't let it dominate you. And ironically, the calmer you are in uncertainty, the more magnetic you become. Not because you're trying to impress, but because you've become impressive. So stop trying to read her every move. Start mastering your own. Because at the end of the day, relationships don't demand perfection. They demand presence. And in the Iron Will Society, presence isn't just a mindset, it's the standard. If this message spoke to something deep within you, if you felt that quiet war between patience and panic, between control and surrender, then you're already one of us. This is the path we walk together in the Iron Will Society, a brotherhood grounded in discipline, clarity, and emotional strength. Now it's your turn to step into the conversation. Drop a comment below and tell us your thoughts. Or simply write Iron Will Society if you're ready to own your growth in silence, in stillness, and in strength. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, not just for more content, but to remind yourself every single week what it means to lead with calm and power in a noisy world, because this isn't just a video, it's a mindset, it's a standard, it's a movement.